they created a new tool that like red hot poked him a new asshole. I listen.
Ash and Zach are super smart. They went to college and learned a bunch of stuff. And Bo and Andrew didn't go to college because that's just the way life goes sometimes. What happens when you put them together and you try to make them learn? Grab your friends, let's listen together on Get Dumped on an Info Dump Podcast. Welcome to Get Dumped On, the Info Dump Podcast. The podcast where four friends get together and one of the people dumps their special interest knowledge on the other three. Yeah. Sorry, I'm fucking pumped.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name's Andrew. I'm pumped right now. Zach, you pumped?
What's up, Andrew?
You didn't answer the question.
What was the question?
Are you pumped?
Sorry, I was too busy being pumped.
You're pumped. What about you, Ash? You pumped?
I'm so pumped.
Hey, Bo.
Most pumped anyone's ever been.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped.
Bo, are you pumped?
Call me
Pumped.
a shell station because I'm fucking pumped.
Oh shit!
Pumped.
Whoa.
Today we got another episode. I'm not going to call it a special episode because I don't know what the fuck he's doing. Zach is going to be hosting.
Every episode is
It's
special.
a
And we're just gonna
pretty
keep
normal
rolling.
episode.
It's going to be a good episode. It's going to be a filler episode. Who knows? I guess we'll find out.
I hope
pretty
you don't
soon.
think it's a filler episode. I did like actual research for it.
No, this would be considered regular. I think filler episodes are like the last one where we played games,
Yeah.
and the other one where we also played games.
Well, you know, sometimes it's fun
we
to play
play
games.
It's true. And I'm not saying
It's fun to play
necessarily a bad
games.
thing, but this one, get ready.
Live
You're
on
gonna
the
learn.
podcast, Andrew hates games.
You're going to learn, and you're not going to have any fun. Zach, pump us up.
I'm pumping.
Pump us up.
Pump us up.
Pump it.
Pump it up until you
Louder.
don't
Pump it.
need it.
Pump
it
up
up.
the jam.
'Cause
Pump
you
it
don't
up.
really need it.
This is awesome.
This is the whole episode. It's just Zach doing that.
And he's the
Like,
host, dude. That's weird.
Like Elvis Costello.
Who?
Yeah.
That was
El-
that was-
I think you
Costello
mean
is.
Presley.
Yeah.
No, it's a different person. You
you're
not
talking
knowing who
about-
Elvis Costello is
you're
makes
talking
you
about-
look like the idiot, not me.
So you're talking about Elvis Costello?
No, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about old-ass surgery.
sick.
Yeah.
Let me guess. It's just so much death.
Oh yeah. Well, so I'm actually talking about. I'm going to go a little different than what kind of the thought of old surgeries would be, because I think we have discussed on the podcast before that like 300% mortality rate surgery from like Victorian England.
Yeah,
Yes.
where the guy killed himself, the guy on the table, and somebody else passing by, or somebody else that was helping him.
They were so shocked
Yeah.
or something that they died.
He cut them accidentally and they died.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going back even further than that. I'm going to be talking about some of the oldest known examples of surgery and some of the most widespread successful surgeries that we see in the ancient world. And then if we have time, I'm going to talk about kind of a cool story from like 1400.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And you're not going to say
I'm going to say And listen,
Oh.
the more you make me aware of it, the more it's going to happen to me. So the only way that you can fix this problem is by not bringing it up.
Bring up what?
The times that I say
Well, you just brought it up.
you say that a lot, and you just said it.
Andrew brought it up. It's fine.
Did he?
I
I'm
don't know.
sorry, what did you just say, Bo?
I said, not
I don't know.
See,
it
but I'm
seems
not
like
on
it's
I'm
basically
not-
the same word.
Really? Because I'm not the one on trial here.
Is there a surgery that you can have that makes you get rid of the word
Yeah, get rid of his vocal
lobotomy.
cords.
Yeah, a laryngotomy.
Bless you.
and out of me? That was a good joke. Everyone should love
Pretty
that.
good joke.
Zach, take it away.
It would be an ummectomy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be an ummectomy.
Yes, but that's
An
like too
ummotomy would be-
technical.
An ummotomy would be putting something on top of the ums, I think.
I'm still a big fan of get 'em out of me.
Yeah.
It's in my
Get it.
top five.
Otomy is a surgical procedure suffix that refers to cutting or making an incision to a body part. But an ectomy is the removal of a thing.
Get it out of
So-
there. You're out of here.
Get 'em out of me,
Yeah.
ectomy.
Get
Get
out of
it
here.
outta here. So, as long as there have been people, we've been getting injured. because bodies be squishy and sometimes they just break on their own. LOL.
And ours is like particularly fragile, I think.
By the standards, it would be pretty sweet if we had some sort of carapace. I'd be into that.
What?
And just like, I mean, if we had armor, you know, that'd be cool so you don't get
Yeah.
stabbed. And like we walk upright, so like our spines and our knees are messed up. And our heads are so vulnerable.
Yeah.
I would like to violate some HIPAA violations real quick. Those of who here has had surgery, and what was it?
I've had 2 surgeries.
Oh, Mr. Two Surgery. They call him Two Surgery Zach.
I believe, as I've spoken about on this podcast before, I broke my femur in a snowmobiling accident, and so it was reset and put together with titanium rods. For my
that's
first
why you like
surgery.
RoboCop. Because
Yeah,
you're slowly
exactly.
becoming him.
He's part machine.
And
That was
then
his goal.
My second surgery was a
Was the end game.
cholecystectomy that I got a few years ago.
He doesn't have his
Okay,
colon no more.
cholecystectomy. I'm gonna guess it. Ectomy means I've already forgot. I don't know.
I had my gallbladder removed.
Oh.
You remember? It was a couple of weeks
Oh,
before
yeah, I remember
I came
that.
to visit, and we went golfing.
We-
It was like basically the day after they said that I could return to normal activity, and we went to the
Yeah.
driving range. And
And
then
then
the
you
next
started
morning,
bleeding.
I woke up and there was a bunch of blood in my belly button.
Yeah, that was
They
cool.
said it was fine, so it was okay.
It's
do
fine.
you count your eyes?
Oh, do I count my eyes? That's a good question. I
You
guess
had
I should
laser
count
eyes,
my
right?
eyes. Yeah, I have laser eyes. Wow, I
My
really
God,
have
you
been
are
surgered
becoming.
upon.
You are becoming RoboCop.
Yeah, he's just waiting for his. He applied for the police, and he's just waiting for that to go through. Once he does, then it's like a reverse RoboCop. Like he did the Robo first, and then now he's gonna be the
Mhm.
cop after.
Exactly. What about you guys?
No. Never had surgery.
You never had surgery?
Never had surgery.
Ah, dude, go hurt yourself, brother. It's pretty great.
Okay.
It's not great. It's not great. It's so scary.
I had a good time.
That's awful.
Oh yeah, you had
An appendectomy.
My appendix betrayed me, and I had to get it all
That was
scooped
fucked
out.
up.
that sounds scary.
It was fine.
Yeah, I don't know how you say it was fine. Like, it was scary.
I mean, it hurt a lot, but then after the surgery, they're like, here's a bunch of Percocet, and I was like, this is a great, I'm gonna have a great few weeks.
One thing that I learned recently
won't
is
poop
that
a single time.
researchers who go to the bases in Antarctica have to have their appendixes removed before they go down.
Just in case.
Just in case.
A preventative measure. That's wild. I
Yeah,
mean, can't do an
because they spend,
appendectomy
like-
down there.
Yeah, they spend the winter like basically completely isolated from the rest of society. There was one, I mean, I don't know if this was the catalyst for it or not, but there was one time where a guy in Antarctica who was a doctor had to perform his own appendectomy.
Oh my god,
Damn, that's hardcore.
awesome.
And how about you, Ash?
I have had 2 surgeries
Yeah, we remember because we had to delay an episode of the podcast because you were recovering.
because
from
I
one of
was
them.
insurgered. I was both.
Yeah, remember Ash was podcasting from the bed?
Yeah.
We talked about it a couple times.
Yeah,
Like, Ash
the whole
was,
thing.
we strapped the microphone on the boom arm to the side of the bed, and I laid down with my foot elevated. I had foot surgery 2 times on the same foot because they didn't do it good enough the first time, and so I had to have it done a second time, and it was awful, and I hated it.
just like in corporate America, you're not going to take a day off after surgery. We're going to make you podcast from your bed.
I took two days off before we had to do anything.
2
I
whole days.
was bedridden for.
There you go. You're
weeks.
listening. I know you're listening to Finland right now. That's how many days you take off after surgery in America.
I literally went back to work after 2 days. It was messed up.
Oh my god, our healthcare system is a joke.
But like, ironically, I had to take off a bunch of time to like go to doctor's appointments and stuff.
And so while we're talking about how because our surgeries were all done in very clean, modern surgical operating theaters with stainless steel scalpels and bone saws and anesthesia, these luxuries of the modern era.
And then they say, go to sleep. And then you wake up and it happened. And you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people in old times had to fix injuries with what they had. And by our standards, these could seem pretty gruesome, but it's what they had at the time. And so I want to present some of this ancient medical history this week with the caveat that if you're listening to this, I'm not a medical doctor and the information from this episode is for entertainment purposes only. This is
They
not
call
medical
him
advice.
Dr. Zach,
Yeah.
MD.
Well, no, they don't. I'm not a doctor.
Listen,
Shut up.
The doctor is talking right now.
Yeah, Bo.
Wait, do you
you're
have a
the doctor.
doctorate?
No, I gave up halfway through.
Okay, Zach is not a doctor.
Yes.
He's just a master.
Yeah, I am a master.
Bader.
Oh, Bo.
God,
Oh,
Master
there's the Bo that we missed.
Lowbrow humor coming from me.
We haven't had a lot of like Bo lowbrow stuff lately, so you gotta bring
There's
it back a little bit.
surprisingly not that much.
I
of it on
literally
episode
talked
69.
about coming into a river and watching it race 2 episodes ago.
Okay, that was
Why would you say
in
it
the
again?
episode. That was in the 69th episode though. Like
That's
that
supposed to
doesn't
stay
count.
in the past.
That's like your
gum?
cheat meal, you know? Like
And then you forget
you-
about it.
yeah, you're like, oh, like I'll go to the fast food place, once this month and then go as hard as possible. You don't talk about it to anybody.
I know.
You don't admit it.
Yeah, I understand what you're describing to a T because I do it all the time. I'm gonna do it tonight.
Mhm.
Dr.
Yeah,
Zach,
go
sorry,
on.
Master
Go, yeah,
Zach, Master Zach, take it away.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing that I wanted to start off with is actually kind of an update to one of our previous episodes. And so this is going to be the only time that I'm talking about teeth the whole time, because I know Andrew hates it when I talk about teeth.
We all do.
But-
Teeth,
We all
the
did.
bones of your head.
I don't know why
luxury
you, I don't
bones
know
of
why you
your face.
singled out Andrew when it was just the
Because he had the most violent reaction.
Mm.
This is
I
very
think
quick.
that we all kind of rebelled against you now.
Yeah.
We
And it was
hated
great.
you
I loved
for it, and I
months.
still kind of hate you
For
for
months.
it.
We,
You know what's funny?
we
I
had
forgot.
we had a separate group chat. Like we
I forgot about it until you just fucking brought it back up. So now my hate for you has returned, and I just
Well,
I
I
don't
don't
know if I
think
can
that any
continue.
of that same. I don't know if anything is going to get that bad this episode. I mean, it's not that crazy. But this tooth situation, it's not even. It's barely surgery. But I found it while I was doing the research, and I just wanted to kind of update everyone on some more examples of, or more particularly one more example of Neanderthal dental hygiene that was recently found at a place called El Cedrón. This was actually published a couple of years ago. I should have caught it while I was doing the episode, but I missed it.
idiot.
Anyway, some scientists studied the enamel on the teeth of some jawbones that were found in this area, and they found DNA from poplar trees, which contains salicylic acid, which is historically a component of aspirin, and penicillium mold in the tooth enamel, which could indicate that they were treating there was also a visible tooth abscess. And so it could be that they were treating it, they somehow knew what penicillin was, or that it had these antibiotic properties, which is pretty cool. You know what penicillin is?
Yeah,
Okay, what is it?
it's an antibiotic.
Yeah. Yeah, so penicillin, everybody, Bo, you know what penicillin is?
This is quiz time, motherfucker. I got you, bitch.
I don't know. Nobody reacted to anything. I think it's pretty interesting that these Neanderthals had somehow identified a natural source of the mold that penicillin comes from, and were used and were able to identify the antibiotic effects of it in some capacity to the point where they were applying it to a tooth abscess. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's fucking
Did they
sick.
just get lucky, or do you think that they actually knew?
I
I
mean,
think that
they were
they probably
probably
Like wildly lucky.
these sorts of things, these sorts of like folk medicines are pretty, almost every group of people were able to figure out, and by almost every, I mean, pretty much every sort of group of people eventually figured out that certain plants and things around the world have medicinal properties.
Even monkeys do
over,
that.
over generations of testing and experimentation and oral
The
tradition.
hell?
Like monkeys
And
eat
so-
specific leaves because they have like anti-parasitic properties. Sometimes some species will like rub specific leaves all over their bodies because it acts as like a bug repellent. Like, is a thing in our evolutionary
Yeah.
history.
And so they had identified a source of not only antibiotic, and I'm not saying that they understood that bacteria caused infections, just that they knew that if they applied this fungus to wounds, then they didn't get all red and inflamed and make you die.
And
and-
all the bad stuff that comes out of it.
And they identified that poplar trees, you can chew on poplar trees and you can use it to make a painkiller, a rudimentary
Interesting.
painkiller, which is pretty interesting.
Fun fact, they use salicylic acid on cow hooves. Have you ever watched cow hoof videos online? Just me? Well, that's what they do.
No, wait, I've seen that. Where like they go in there and they clean them all out and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's like Nate the Hoof Guy is one of them.
Yeah. I've seen that's actually a really fun channel to
Dude,
watch.
I get so lost in it, but I'm pretty sure that he uses salicylic acid spray.
That's
It makes
sick.
sense.
So still used today, crazy.
Hey Zach,
Yes?
Do you know who invented penicillin? Because I do.
Yeah, it was
Don't Google it.
Alexander Fleming.
He Googled it.
No, I didn't.
He Googled it.
You would have been able to hear his keyboard.
Yeah. And he discovered it by accident too, right? Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, he did. Just like the Neanderthals.
And Neanderthals are like, their teeth are crazy. Like, they have very specific shaped teeth. They would use their teeth as tools. Like, I feel like they're
It
pretty
probably led to a lot of
mouth oriented.
oral fixation.
But like,
Yeah, for a
if
second,
your
I wanted
teeth
to say
are
it
a
was Louis
tool,
Pasteur, but he just figured out boiling stuff, right?
yeah, pasteurization.
Yeah.
But if your teeth are a tool, it makes sense that you would want to know how to take care of them. That's all I'm saying.
And they were around for like a couple 100,000 years. Plenty of time to figure stuff out. Anyway, let's move on to how old, if you had to guess, how old do you think the earliest known amputation was? Like deliberate amputation.
So old.
So, how old? Probably about, I don't know. I'll probably guess about like, let's throw a number out there. Like 1,500 years ago. Yeah, that's my number. 1,500.
1,500? Try 31,000 years ago.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. This was published about last year and was described as the earliest known amputation. Found in a limestone karst, which is kind of like a very porous, cavey, mountainy area where the bedrock is all limestone. And in an area that contains some of the oldest rock art in Borneo. Researchers found a skeleton of a 19 to 20-year-old of indeterminate sex. Dated it to 31,000 years ago. They were an anatomically modern Homo sapiens. But the skeleton showed evidence that the lower third of the left leg was removed 6 to 9 years before they died, based on the amount of healing on the bone.
That's cool.
Which is pretty interesting. And the trauma, like the actual pattern of the trauma, it's not consistent with an accident or an animal attack, because an animal attack probably would have caused a lot more splintering than there was, and like massive infection of the bone, because animals have filthy, disgusting mouths. And like there's like crocodiles in the area, but if a crocodile died, it would have like done a death roll situation, and that would have fucked the whole thing up. But we don't, because the part that actually got injured is missing. We don't know why they had to get amputated, but we can infer a lot about the people who did this based on the fact that they successfully amputated a limb from a person.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Pretty neat. So they knew enough about anatomy and hygiene to successfully remove the leg. They were skilled enough with high enough quality stone tools. Post-operative care was advanced enough to avoid an infection that to avoid a bad infection that would have left evidence on the bones, which is a real feat in Borneo, because Borneo is a jungle, which is, where things get infected really quickly. And they had enough community support that they could still navigate, life in this karst region, which is mountainy and cavey and stony, without a leg. So they were able to heal, recover, and live for another 6 to 9 years after they lost the leg. This would have happened to a child too, based on how old they were when they died.
It's pretty sick,
and it's pretty neat. So this could have been a developed skill over generations, and we just haven't found any other individuals who had been surgered upon, or this could have been just a one-off. We don't know, but it's still really interesting. Would you care to wildly speculate on what could have happened that they'd need to
I'm
to
good.
amputate the foot?
No,
I'm going to go with ran over by Zach on a snowmobile.
Well,
how old do you think Zach
neither
is?
I nor snowmobiles existed 31,000 years ago.
Shit.
So,
okay. Pass.
I think it was like a 127 hours situation where they like got their legs stuck in a boulder crevasse, and it was like this really intense situation, and they had to like figure, and they finally got them out and like had to amputate the leg. That's what I think.
That's a pretty good one. Bone Edge, have you ever heard of a concept called yes and?
Yes.
No.
That's an improv thing.
Yeah.
I was in improv class. Come on.
Or snake bite.
Mm.
Got to cut the leg off before the venom spreads.
Snake bite. Ooh, ah, ah. I know it's a different thing, but it's fine.
It's shark bait. Like, what are you doing? You're better than that.
It's a completely different word. I
You
know.
just wanted to say
God.
ooh-ah.
Snake bite.
Who doesn't
ooh-ah.
always want to say ooh, ah, ah? Bo, give me an ooh, ah, ah.
Can I get an ooh-ah-ah?
Shark bait.
Can I get a huck to
No, it's dead. You killed it.
No, it's
Oh,
timely.
man,
No,
that
that
was
was great.
pretty
That was
funny.
great. That
That
was
was
great.
good.
Don't
I
listen to
regret
this.
nothing on that
No,
one.
you shouldn't, because Zach's a big hater. Continue, Zach.
That's all right. Bo. This one's only for you. Huck to
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let's imagine ourselves in a scenario. You're a Flemish doctor.
Should I close my eyes?
You're a Flemish barber in the 1400s.
You said doctor.
And, well, as we established in the last episode,
Stuff can be two
doctors
things.
and barbers were often one and the same.
You just switch things up on us, and you're trying to make us look like fools.
Yeah, that's what he's
A fle-
doing
you're-
now. That's what he's doing.
You're a
This is a power.
Flemish
This is a
barber.
power thing. He's just trying to show his power over.
Oh my God, he's trying to. Oh my.
Yeah,
Stop
I'm a
it.
doctor barber. My eyes are closed.
Okay, hold on. Yep, I'm scalping this head.
A patient is brought to you with
Sorry, I was cutting his hair and I just kept on cutting.
My eyes are closed, and I'm doing a terrible job.
a patient is brought to you who is having seizures and complaining of headaches. What would you do?
Cut his
cutting
legs
hair.
off.
Here's your problem. Too much hair.
Too many legs. Your legs can't shake if you don't have them.
Yep. Yes, you would get out your trusty dusty handy dandy trephine
I call them rusty
and drill a hole in their head.
because it's rusty.
You'd engage in some trephination, cut a hole in that sucker's head, and let it air out the humors to hopefully clear the head of disease.
They drilled a hole in their head.
Yeah, and that is a process called trepanation or trephination. They're two words that are used kind of interchangeably for the process of drilling a hole in somebody's head. And like a lot of different things in this sort of situation, trepanation comes from Greek and trephination comes from Latin. And so some people want to call it by the Greek name and some people want to call it by the Latin name. But the sources that I was looking up for this do kind of make a distinction between the two. So trepanation comes from the Greek for trupanon, which means borer, which comes from Hippocrates and is usually used to refer to a kind of more, I don't want to say primitive, but simple form of it, using knives and chisels and such to carve out a chunk of the skull. Whereas trephination comes from trephinus, which is Latin, which comes from a guy named Fabricius ab Aquapendente.
Damn.
Who invented-
Febreze?
Yeah, who invented the trephine.
Like, if he was not in the perfume business, what are we even doing?
Yeah.
Which is a tool that was used for this, which is kind of like a hole saw at the end of a handle that had two kind of,
It's like an
lobes to
auger.
it. It had three. No, it wasn't an auger. It was more of a hole saw situation, and it had three lobes to it, which is why they called it a trephinus. And so this is a long standing tradition of drilling holes into people's heads. So to the Europeans, they had known about trepanation for a while. Hippocrates in Greece wrote about it. The Romans did a little bit of trepanation, and the Europeans brought it back towards the beginning of the Middle Ages, especially when this trephine was invented. And they used it for all kinds of stuff. Mostly, well, I don't want to say mostly, but there is a stereotype and some evidence that they used it for curing mental disease, stuff like epilepsy, headaches, insanity, madness, I suppose they would call it. There's actually a really good and kind of often cited Hieronymus Bosch painting called The Cure for Madness or Folly, which shows a surgical incision being made in the scalp, getting ready to drill a hole in there and extract the stone of madness.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Harry Potter thing. That's where Dumbledore. That's why Dumbledore let those kids keep coming back, even though they were trying to be murdered all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the next book that's coming out.
Yeah, he had a stone of madness.
He's a fucking stone of madness.
And,
He's a piece of shit.
And so at the beginning, this had a relatively high survival rate, but over time, actually, they got worse at it to the point where by the 1800s, it was like a 10% or less survival rate. And people were saying that if you're a doctor who's going to trephine somebody, you need to have it done to yourself first because you're obviously crazy if you're going to be doing this, which is kind of funny. And the main issue to this is that the brain is surrounded by a what's the word I'm looking for? A membrane called the dura mater. It's one of those words where I've only ever seen it written, but I haven't actually looked up how to pronounce it.
I think it's dura mater.
Dura mater.
I think so. I'll look it up.
It's a membrane around the brain. And if you penetrate that membrane, if you open it up, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to expose the brain to bacteria. You're going to cause all sorts of problems.
You might become insane.
In the membrane.
Yeah, see, that's what they're talking about. Then around the 1860s,
breach the membrane.
Around the 60s, a guy named, I didn't write down his name. It was Edmund Brock?
The Rock?
Brock?
Lesnar?
Shit, I didn't write his name down.
It's fine.
It's fine. In the 1860s, a guy found a skull in a store in Peru and started showing it all around Europe of a skull that also showed this trepanation scar. And they were like, oh, the folly of the Indians. They're drilling holes into each other's heads. But in reality, it turns out that not only did they do it a lot, they were better at it than they were. Which
Really?
is fun. So let's talk about that for a minute. Trepanation as a thing, we've now know that trepanation goes back at least to 6500 BCE. So almost 8,000 years ago, or 8,500 years ago. Yeah. Which is the oldest ones that are known from a site in France. And these kind of go all throughout the Neolithic. There's a lot of them being found to the point where actually 5 to 10% of all Neolithic cranial remains have some evidence of trepanation. Even a cow, which was from around 3,400 to 3,000 BCE, has a trepanation mark on its skull. It didn't survive, though. So this was either experimentation or some sort of ridiculous veterinary practice.
Holy crap.
And depending on the site, assemblage or sample or interpretation of the evidence, we've got anywhere from a 50 to 90% survival rate for this Neolithic trepanation. And you can tell that because on ones where they don't survive, it's very clear that the bone is has not healed. You'll see the bone on ones that people who have survived it, the bone is healed, it's rounded, it's smooth, and sometimes it even starts closing the hole back up, depending on how long the person ended up living afterwards.
Yeah, you can tell you can tell healing on bones afterward. It's pretty cool the way that bones heal themselves.
Pretty cool. And this Neolithic trepanation is really interesting. Another pretty incredible fact that I found out about this is that some of the same sites where trepan skulls were found also produced these skull bone discs, like discs that are very clearly made of material removed from a skull.
Well, we got to do something with it.
And some of them had smaller holes bored into them, probably so that they could be used as amulets.
Oh my God.
So how
that's so
cool is that? You get trepanated and then they let you keep the disc that they drilled out of your head.
Bad. This is my skull.
I know.
Yeah.
This is like, I know how much Ash loves skulls.
Yeah. And then you just wear it around your neck.
I would love that.
So cool. I love that. On my notes next to that, I wrote, hardcore, I love this, in all caps.
They wake up and they're like, can I keep that?
You gonna eat that?
Or would the doctor keep it? And they would put all of them on a chain and be like, this is how many successful ones that I've done.
So it turns out that some people have done experimental tests with this on cadavers, mostly. I'll get into it. And it turns out that it's not impossible to do this with only stone tools. You can use a really sharpened, like bifacial stone knife to create these scores in the bone. And if you work at them long enough, you can really just cut through the skull. And if you're careful enough, you won't penetrate the dura mater, and then you just remove a nice little square plug or circular plug, depending. You can also use like the drill method. You can have like a drill with some sort of abrasive or a stone tip, and have like a bow that you use to like spin the drill, kind of like a hand drill situation. If you ever see like, those like Boy Scout fire starters where they use like the bow string around like a stick, and they spin it.
Yes.
Yeah, imagine that, but with a stone tip, and instead it's drilling into a skull. And if you do enough of those holes in a line, then you can remove a little disc. Then the other method that they often used would be just scraping the skull matter away. They're just scraping the bone away.
I hate that.
Which sounds to me like the most painful way of doing it.
Yeah.
Now, the other main assemblage where this like trepanation is known from is my favorite place, Peru. And there's probably the largest kind of evidence for like some sort of big cultural tradition around trepanation comes in like a really well-developed tradition of it, that people have clearly like developed this skill and transmitted the skill between people over the course of like many years, is this tradition of trepanation medically done in Peru. And so most of the data here, for people who are interested, comes from a very good book that is called Holes in the Head by a guy named John Verano. It's a few years old at this point, so I apologize if any of this turns out to later be outdated. I don't think so, though. It's not that old. But basically, there's three main kind of waves of this, like geotemporally. The oldest ones known are from the Paracas, and this should be familiar to you from the other episode that we did, which are from 400 to 200 BCE is this kind of assemblage. Then the Northern Highlands, kind of near the site of Wari, which is like 1,000 years later during the late Intermediate period, which is about 1,000 to 1400 CE. And fun fact, I worked at the site of Wari for a summer. It was pretty cool. I found a little canal.
You're bragging.
I found a little stone canal and a lot of ceramic
You found
shards.
a way to just drop that information in here to be a little humble brag. Get out of here, you. I need
bona fides so that people know that I'm saying things that are true.
They're just jealous of you, Zach. Don't let them bring you down. They're just jealous of you.
Yeah, thank you. And then the last kind of big wave of this, and the most sophisticated examples of it, come from the Inca period in the Southern Highlands around Cusco. This is like 1476 to 1534. And then it continued after into the colonial period a bit. But the Spanish were like, this is weird. Why are you doing this? And eventually they stopped. So one thing that you may remember from the last episode that I did about Peru is that warfare in the ancient Andes was pretty much almost entirely done with blunt weapons. I mean, they would bring axes and knives and stuff into combat, but most people had, stone-headed maces, and the primary projectile weapon was a sling. They had like a textile sling, and it wasn't like a slingshot. It was like, textile. You'd put a rock into like a little bandana, swing it around your head, and fucking throw it, and you can get a stone going pretty fucking fast with that method. And they used pretty like golf ball sized stones too, and just whip them at people. It's incredible. And so this led to, what does that lead to? A lot of traumatic brain injuries and blunt force trauma. And
hey, what's that sound? Donk.
And as a result, you get a lot of swelling in the skull. And so Andean doctors, and I don't think we actually know who was performing the surgeries, but for the sake of this, I'm going to just say that they were doctors, knew that you could
healthcare professionals.
Yeah, healthcare professionals. You could relieve the pressure caused by this blunt force trauma and the swelling in the skull by cutting a fucking hole out of the skull. And so usually what happens is there's two types of kind of traumatic brain injuries that result from blunt force trauma, like the two main types. There's epidural and subdural hematomas. And so a hematoma is just like a broken blood vessel. And epidural means on the surface of the dura mater, whereas subdural means underneath the dura mater. So between the dura mater and the brain. So these main way that trepanation was used was to treat these epidural hematomas, where a blood vessel on the surface of the dura mater breaks, and then the head starts swelling up with like blood. And then that causes pressure against the brain, which gives you really bad headaches and can result in all sorts of different injuries and brain death and stuff like that, depending on how badly it goes. And we know that they use them to treat this blunt force trauma because a lot of these trepanation holes, you can kind of see the spider webbing of the cracked skull around the edges of the hole.
That's fucking wild. What the hell?
It's totally bananas. So they see, you get knocked unconscious for a while. You come back and somebody's like, hey, you got a headache? Yeah. Let me cut a hole out of your head. And then they cut a hole out and then the blood drains out. Then they would apply a poultice of, plant-based herbal remedies. We don't know. I don't know if we know what exactly they used, but I'm sure somebody does, but I didn't find it. And like kind of pat it on and like hold attach like a reed mat to the head to hold the plant on, and then eventually it all heals up and you're golden. And now
Like
what
a fucking
we also
graft. That's nuts.
yeah. The other kind of reason that we know that this was the result of blunt force trauma from like this warfare is that most of the trepanation holes are on the left vault of the head. So kind of like on the crown of your head on the left side, which
And
is
most people are right-handed.
and most people are right-handed. So if a right-handed person is swinging a stone mace at your head, you're going to get hit on the left side of your head. Then there's also the frontal bone, the right in the front, like in the forehead, which is probably where you're going to be hit by a sling stone. And so those are where most of them are found.
I nailed him right in the forehead.
Yeah.
Gee. What the hell?
It's kind of nuts. And so this was kind of like experimentation and studying. Like nobody's found like a trepanation kit to know exactly what tools were used. But from knowing what tools they had access to, the general kind of consensus is that they used a Toomey knife, and you could, which is like a sacrificial, not sacrificial. That's not the right word. Ceremonial kind of like lunate. So like kind of half circle shaped with like a half circle with a handle attached to it, knife made out of copper. That would be used to scrape away or cut away the skin. And then they'd score the bone with an obsidian knife, in either a square or a circle shape. And some of them have the most incredible score marks around the actual hole.
Oh God! Oh yeah, hold on. I'm not. Before I look, Zach just sent a picture in our chat. and the
I
last
sent the
time-
picture, and it is
Okay.
of the knife that he was talking about.
Okay,
Is that
thank you.
a knife or is that a? Let's see. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh, butt plug.
It looks a little butt pluggy, but that would suck if it was a butt plug because it would hurt.
It is flat.
Mhm.
It is not
Okay.
round.
Yeah.
That's how you make pancake poops. Yeah, okay, good.
Sorry, thinking of pancake poops. You know.
Okay, great. Cool beans. I mean, I could send pictures of skulls, but I don't think that you guys want to see them because every
I
time
do.
Yeah, the Ash really wants to see them, but the last time that you were entrusted in sending pictures about the story you were telling, you were sending pictures of literal frozen dead people, and it did not go over well.
I thought those were cool. I'm sorry.
You gotta give somebody a heads up. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, here's one.
Oh, that's not bad. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can really see the score marks, like a
Mhm.
game of tic-tac-toe, but instead, you get a little piece of your skull out of there.
You nailed
Here's
that.
a-
It's like tic-tac-toe. Like they made lines, and then in the middle of the tic-tac-toe
Mhm.
board, they just drilled a hole in the skull.
Yeah.
That's a
And here's
really
another
big
one.
hole.
Yeah, and here's another one where you can really see how well the bone healed afterwards.
So that's how big. Like this is like the size of like that's way bigger than a quarter.
Oh yeah, they were huge. Sometimes it all depended on like how big the area was. There's a really good one on the cover of the book, which shows it because sometimes they didn't even just do one. They
What
would
the
have to do
shit?
multiple
There's
procedures.
4
as
holes in
well.
that guy's head.
Mm-hmm.
How did you survive after that?
Well, they did. It's pretty cool.
I mean, they're clearly dead. It's a skull.
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, now they're dead.
Yeah. Now they're dead
Yeah.
because
you
this
can
was also
tell
done
that the bones-
700 years ago, so
Yeah.
they'd be dead now regardless.
But you can tell that the bones healed because of how smooth they are. When you die with bone injury, it stays like jagged and open. The spaces
Mhm.
don't fill in at all. There's very specific signs of like healing.
Those are not filled in. Those are holes.
Well, so think about like the rim itself, right? The rim of the wound. It's got some thickness. And if it was not healed, you would be able to like see the spongy bone. So we have 2 different types of bone. We have cortical bone and spongy bone. You'd be able to like see the inside of the bone and the like network of the bone structures as
Mhm.
opposed to this, which is completely smooth because it's like healed over and it's like,
Yeah. Now here's another one I'm going to post.
Poor
This is
guy. He's got 4 holes in his head.
This is somebody who died less than 2 weeks after the procedure was done, based on the
bone
So
regrowth.
take a look at the edge of it.
Okay, well, that's also the entire top part of his head is missing.
The entire top
Yeah.
of his head. But also, so as you see what I'm this like inside of the rim, there is a sponginess. They call it spongy bone for a reason. It's like a web of bone tissue. And that's how you know. Because that's what's inside of all of our bones. Well, most of them.
This guy also looked like he got a haircut from Bo with his eyes closed because the entire top
Yeah,
of his head is
they
missing.
just kept on going.
No, yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the guy was having seizures, so I had to take care of it.
Yeah. And so then here's another one. So we also know that they probably practiced this on cadavers. So this is one that was kind of like a practice that we used for that hole drilling method that I was talking about. Because there's absolutely zero indication that there's any healing on this.
It's a picture where there is a series of holes where you can really see them just going like they drilled one in a row, one right next to it. It really looks like they were practicing depth and keeping a consistent depth. So there's a big line of dots, and then around the trepanation itself, there is like, it's very uniform. It really seems like someone was being very methodical and practicing technique.
Mm-hmm. It's a hole made of many holes.
Yeah.
Life is many holes.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like if you've ever done any woodworking, if you need to cut a hole in the middle of a surface, like if you have a sheet of plywood in front of you and you need to cut a square hole out of the middle of it, what you do is start by drilling a hole at each corner of the hole that you need to make, and then you can use a saw in the hole that you've created with the drill to actually get that thing out. So yeah. It's pretty cool. So as you saw, some people went for 2 and even 3 procedures. The most that has been found, do you want to guess?
12.
102.
No. Is 7 healed holes.
Wow.
They can't just. Is this at once?
Well, if it was 7 healed holes, what usually it is they make one hole. It doesn't exactly solve the problem, and so then they come back for multiple procedures.
Come back for more. The first one's always free.
And sometimes they do something which is called cranioplasty, which is where either the bone disc is put back in to create a surface for the skin to grow back, or there's been like 2 ever actually verified cases of a metal disc being put over the hole to seal it up or whatever.
That's crazy.
Every once in a while you'll find people talking about and I don't have a source for this picture, so don't treat it as gospel. I was reading another paper by the same author of this book, and he was saying that his survey found no examples of cranioplasty. But if you look around the internet, you'll find people talking about how they used like gold or silver to plug the holes back up and all this other stuff. And I don't know if any of it is actually anything that you can believe, because I don't think it's been like archaeologically verified. It may just be looted skulls that are being sold in antique shops and stuff like that. It could be faked. I don't know. This is just an example of
Without
that.
provenance.
I think that's copper.
You can never know.
There's no provenance for it. So you can't say
this
for
last
sure.
one that you sent has a gigantic ear canal.
Yeah, this is also an enlarged skull. So one thing that they would do is they would, if you bind a baby's head between 2 like wooden planks, or just like wrap it tightly with rope, it'll get long like that. Have a tall head.
Sorry, what?
Yeah. So when a baby is born, when they're only a couple of weeks old, the skull is very pliable because it has to be to get through the birth canal. And
I know that.
Yeah, something that a lot of people have done all across the world in various areas is a thing that's called cranial binding. And either you can you can strap boards to the baby's head, or you can just tie it up really tight with rope. But you can deliberately give somebody a cone head. And this was kind of something that is found relatively often in South America and in Mesoamerica as well. And it was probably seen as a cultural identifier. So like in Paracas, this region, in some of the burials, they found people with different shapes of heads. And so like the theory is that people from one region would have their head in one shape, and people from a different region would have their head in a different shape. And that was sort of like an unfakeable marker of where you were from, like what your ethnic group was. You couldn't fake it. You couldn't say that you were not from there. Other ideas are that like it was done by nobles to make them more, it was something that was desirable to be like fancier. Like my head is taller than yours, peasant, things like that.
Look at you with your regular sized forehead.
By all accounts, it doesn't actually cause any sort of like brain problems. The brain is it's just a big mushy thing of tapioca up there, and it'll form correctly depending on whatever the size of the skull is. And it doesn't change the volume of the skull at all. It just makes the brain shaped a little bit differently. And so for like the general sort of academic consensus is that it doesn't affect your brain at all, which is kind of cool. But back to the trepanation. The Inca samples show that there is a 73.5% long-term survival. So 3/4 of the people who had this done survived indefinitely after it was done.
Are you talking about cranial binding or trepanation?
No, back to trepanation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cranial binding, as far as I know, has no mortality rate. And so 3/4 of the people who get cranial binding, damn it, I'm fucked up now. Yeah, so big survival rate for drilling a hole in the head in South America.
Pretty cool.
And 10.2% further show just short-term survival. And a good number of the people who did not survive have very evidence of really, really bad, like really long radiating fracture lines. So the traumatic brain injury probably would have killed them anyway.
It was a Hail Mary situation.
Yeah, I think the assumption is that it was probably they cracked that skull open and found out that it was a subdural hematoma that they couldn't really do anything about.
Sick.
Yeah, and so this the Inca era survival rate is actually kind of showing that there's also like a lot of development and refinement done to this technique over time, because the Paracas skulls show 40% long-term survival. So they like almost doubled the long-term survival rate over the course of the years, which is really interesting, I think. I would also recommend to anyone interested by this to read Holes in the Head, because it also has an interesting bit at the end about how
It's called Holes in the Head?
Yeah, the book that I've been referencing has a really interesting bit at the end regarding how like the effects of the sort of traumatic brain injuries that would be pretty common amongst these people, and the lasting effects of those, and how it would affect society with like the cognitive issues and aphasia and stuff like that would happen. Yeah. And so when I was talking before about people kind of doing experimental studies with this is in 1944 and 1953, 2 different Peruvian doctors tried out trepanation using Inca methods and Inca period tools after practicing on cadavers. And so both were technically successful in that the patient survived the operation. The first one died a few days later of pneumonia, and the second one, there's no reports of what their postoperative life was. So I have no idea how successful these guys were at actually doing it. And also it's kind of questionable how much the patients actually consented to the procedure as well. So
especially if the reason that you're doing a trepanation is because someone's received a traumatic brain injury, you're going to be like, hey, do you mind if I use Inca technology? And they're like, oh, God.
So, yeah, basically, this is just kind of showing that the European methods got worse over time.
Europeans were bad at it.
By the 1800s, it was like a 10% survival rate.
Fucking idiots who didn't know how to wash their hands.
My guess about it is probably, because they were really overconfident about, not needing to wash their hands to do surgery. And also, I think that maybe the drill method that they used with like the trephine, probably there was like, I don't know. I feel
it's
like
not delicate enough.
Looking at the tools, like not delicate enough. There's probably a bigger chance of penetrating the dura mater. This is in complete speculation. I have no idea. So that's the bit on trepanation. So I want to move on to because we talked so much about ancient Egypt in the previous episodes. I want to go into a little bit about ancient Egypt because the oldest known surgical document is Egyptian. This is called the Edwin Smith Surgical Papyrus.
It's bullshit that it's called that.
Well, so it was purchased in 1862 by a guy named Edwin Smith. It was probably looted from who knows where. And it was fully translated in 1930 by a different guy. And it's the oldest known surgical text. The papyrus itself dates to about 1600 BCE. And it was made by an anonymous scribe. And based on the language used, it was probably a copy of a document that was at least 1,000 years old at that point.
Oh, that's cool.
And so because it's kind of like archaic, it's actually incomplete and it stops in the middle of a word. And there's a lot of corrections and notes because it seems like the guy who was copying it had trouble with like the old script and gave up eventually over time. And what's interesting about it is that it lists a bunch of injuries and like difficulties and then says how you would fix it and gives the prognosis of either an ailment which I will treat, an ailment with which I will contend, or an ailment not to be treated. And you'd expect a lot of this, like there's a couple of other kind of contemporaneous surgical documents, but this is the one that is like the most kind of based in like medical science, which is really interesting.
The hell?
where it's actually like you can tell that like that it's actually like there's no like magic involved in it. Is I guess the best way to put it.
Towards the end, there are some like spells and stuff, but those are for like Hail Marys and also like end of life stuff, right?
Mhm.
I thought that I read that.
Yeah. So
It's like, and if the person is definitely gonna die, make sure that they go to the afterlife, okay?
yeah, I found I found the text that goes through. I thought we could go through a couple of them, but it's mostly like bone fractures. Cut this out. Cut this out. Cut
Never.
this out.
Do they list the
this
different types of fractures?
Do you want me
Yeah.
to stop the dead air from happening? I got
Yeah.
this. Okay. Hey everyone, this is Bo in the middle of the episode.
Has anybody ever had a fracture? Broken their bones?
I broken a
yeah.
bone.
Oh,
Yeah.
so many times.
Actually, I broke a bone in my wrist, which was the worst part. You could actually break the wrist, and I actually have a story of a dick doctor. So I'll bring the story of what happened was.
That's called a urologist.
Hey.
He's a dick doctor. So for some reason, it was 7th grade. I broke it, and an 8th grader picked me up and threw me down because I don't know. He was a dick, right? But when I went to go stop myself from hitting the thing,
The
I used my
doctor?
wrist. No, this
Yeah,
8th grader.
it was
The
a doctor. He was a dick.
And so then it just really fucking hurt. And then all day I complained about it. And the nurse is like, okay, ice it. And the nurse is like, you might need to take your son to the doctors. My mom picks me up, go to the doctors. Doctor's poking it. I go, ow. He goes, are you faking it? Huh? Are you faking it? Trying to get out of school? Sounds like you're faking it. I'm like, no, I'm in pain.
What the fuck? What an asshole.
And that's why I called him a dick doctor. And blah blah blah. Going about it. My mom's getting pissed because my mom worked in the medical field. She goes like, this is like very unprofessional. Even
Yeah,
for
super fucked
this,
up.
right? Trying to think like I'm faking it, right? Got X-rays. I don't see anything. Just put him in a sling. Blah blah blah. You'll be good. Mom's like, okay, have to go back to school next day. Right? I'm in a fucking sling. I get a call from the office calls and goes, hey, send Bill up to it. My mom's like, we need to get you back to the doctors right away. Another doctor looked at it and goes, he needs to be in a cast right now before he fucks up his wrist.
Sue that fucking doctor, man.
So I broke
Did
my
you
right
sue the
wrist.
shit out of him?
No.
Because I would sue the
You
shit out
can't.
of
Well,
him.
somebody caught it, so
Yeah.
I don't think that you can.
I caught it before it got
I kind of
worse.
want to sue the shit out of him.
Well, actually, my parents actually have sued the shit out of a doctor who actually fucked up my sister's elbow.
Okay.
Good lord.
They botched the surgery completely awful that she can't bend her right elbow to a full 90-degree angle.
Damn.
And
You're just giving all your family medical secrets away.
Yep.
What's wrong with your dad?
Her pay, I don't know.
I have multiple broken bones all the time. I have a broken bone in my hand right now.
Nice.
I broke my finger. I broke my toes. I broke pretty much everything you can think of. I once, it was snowmobiling and I broke my femur. And my name is Zach.
Same thing happened to me too. And mine's weird 'cause
Yeah.
my name's Zach as well.
I've never broken any bones. Although I had a dick doctor once. I fell off a skateboard and wrecked my ankle really bad.
Wait, is this the same ankle that
Yeah.
you had surgery on?
Yeah, it was.
Oh.
Is this the
And-
origin story?
I mean, kind of. So, and he was like, it doesn't hurt that bad. And I was like, it hurts really freaking bad. And
Dude,
he,
what the fuck is that?
and he was
Yeah,
like,
There's a reason why I'm here, you piece of shit.
and he was
You
like,
should believe me. You're gonna get money for me believing.
I know, right? And he was like, you can walk. And I was like, I really can't. It really hurts. And he's like, I don't believe you, essentially. And so he was like, you can use crutches, I guess, if you want. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to.
Well, I literally have to, you fucking idiot.
Yeah. And if he would have done x-rays, he probably may have seen that my bones were fucked up. But
Why wouldn't they do x-rays? They didn't cost them anything to do x-rays.
he didn't believe me.
Dick doctors, dude, they're out there.
And
Dude, what the hell?
I guess I was not advocated for.
That makes me so uncontrollably angry. I'm very angry right now. Bo, talk me down.
I was also pushing my mom to sue the doctor too for some reason. I don't know why. I was only freaking 12.
You should have seen the doctor.
Why am I pushing for me to sue the doctor?
Take that motherfucker to the cleaners.
I'm uncontrollably angry right
I
now.
want to get so much money.
Inconsolable.
Well, I have I picked one really quickly.
Was your
to
nose?
go over.
Bleh.
Oh yeah, I'm always picking that nose, baby.
You gotta get that gold in mine, that nose, I don't know, nose gold. That's what it is. That's what I was looking for. Got it. I mean, we
He's
eventually
got
get
the
there.
Midas touch. His
Mhm.
his boogers turn to gold.
Just the Midas touch.
My boogers turn to gold.
He's gold,
For
man.
example. Now this is the translation, and it's kind of made archaic because it's in like an archaic form of the like hieroglyphics of the hieroglyphs. If thou examinest a man having a break in his upper arm, and thou findest his upper arm hanging down, separated from its fellow, thou shouldst say concerning him, one having a break in his upper arm, an ailment which I will treat.
Oh, good. Okay. You can treat a broken arm. Great.
Yes. Thou shouldst place him prostrate on his back with something folded between his two shoulder blades. Thou shouldst spread out with his two shoulders in order to stretch apart his upper arm until that break falls into place. Thou shouldst make for him 2 splints of linen, and thou shouldst apply for him one of them both on the inside of his arm, and the other of them both on the underside of his arm. Thou shouldst bind it with imru, which is an unknown mineral. We don't know what it is, but it's something that they used. And treat afterward with honey every day until he recovers.
Huh.
Isn't that nice?
Is that a break or is that more of like a dislocation?
Well, it says about having to set it and that the break has to fall into place.
Yeah.
So it's talking about setting the break.
Yeah.
There's another one about if thou examinest a man having a displacement if thou examinest a man having a dislocation in the vertebra of his neck, shouldst thou find him unconscious of his 2 arms and his 2 legs on account of it, while his phallus is erected on account of it, and urine drops from his member without his knowing it, his flesh has received wind, his 2 eyes are bloodshot, it is a dislocation of a vertebra of his neck extending to his backbone, which causes him to be unconscious of his 2 arms and his 2 legs. If, however, the middle vertebra of his neck is dislocated, it is an emissio seminis which befalls his phallus. Thou shouldst say concerning him, one having a dislocation in a vertebra of his neck, while he is unconscious of his 2 legs and his 2 arms, and his urine dribbles, an ailment not to be treated.
Oh my God! Is that a thing? Is that what's happening?
What?
So this is
that a thing?
There's so many parts of the body you talked about, and I got lost.
Does that mean like paralyzed, like unable to use arms and legs?
This is a dislocation of the vertebra in the neck, which is accompanied by a loss of sensation, which is unconscious of the arms and leg, a lack of control in the passage of urine, erection of the phallus, and ejaculation of semen. This is a thing that happens with cervical dislocations.
Oh my gosh!
I think you're making stuff up again.
And so it's basically one of them causes it's basically a more upper dislocation of the vertebra in the neck would not cause the sort of like uncontrollable erection, whereas one lower down towards the middle of the neck would cause the uncontrollable erection. So they're determining the difference between vertebrae
so my neck
based on the symptoms.
My neck controls my erections?
I mean, your nerves do. You got nerves like in your spinal column.
That's like confirmed. You confirmed that's a thing that happens with like vertebra injuries.
This book that version that I'm reading it from it's a commentary with like modern surgical analysis.
That is fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of interesting ones regarding spinal injuries, but but we can't stay all day talking about boners and spinal injuries. It's just I think a really interesting example of the kind of early academic attention towards medicine. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Written on papyrus. Crazy. Yeah,
written on papyrus and probably almost like 2,600 years old. No, from 2,600 BC. Almost 5,000 years old.
Wow.
Wild.
Pretty cool.
The Egyptians did a lot of cool stuff like this. I found a couple of early prosthetics as well. Specifically, people talk about these 2 prosthetic toes, which are fun. There's one that is made of cartonnage, which is basically paper mache, which is pretty neat. And it's got like a space where
it's
the
just
toenail.
A singular big toe.
Yeah. So it's just the big toe. And then
the big toe is like the most important one, honestly. So
yeah,
it's true.
And the other one is it's called the
You'd be falling all over the place.
And it's made of it's wood and leather stitched together.
Sorry. Before we move on, there's an empty space where the toenail would be. So is that to imply that like the material that they used to make the toenail disintegrated, or was that like you could hot swap toenails?
All it says is that the nail was originally inlaid with a different material. So yeah, you could hot swap to match your outfit, you could have some nice, lapis lazuli in your toenail.
Put some bling in there. Like, that'd be sick.
And, you go into a different function and you decide to, make it mother of pearl. Now, this other one is about 3,000 years old. And this is one of the earliest practical prostheses ever found. So this cartonnage one that I just put in is from 600 BCE. And this one is from about 3,000 years ago. So about 2000 BCE. And it was found attached. There's some foot. Sorry, there's foot on it. It was attached to a mummy. It was found attached to a mummy about 50 or 60 years old.
This? Oh God! Oh,
he said a mummified foot.
I forgot that there was that there was still foot attached to it.
Wow.
But it's more flexible than the other one.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
it's like leather.
Yeah, and so some people made replicas of both of these prostheses, and they kind of tested it around with people who had big toe amputations for whatever reason. And they found that it was actually really, really helpful for keeping an Egyptian-style sandal on your foot and for balance.
Yeah.
Your big toe is really important for balance.
And your big toe is really important for pushing off. When you're taking your stride, you use your big toe to like accelerate and push off. So without that, it'd be like tiring to walk, I think.
Yeah. And this wooden one also kind of shows signs that it was modified to be refit this person's foot as they got older. So they probably had it for a really long time. They were 50 or 60 years old when they died.
That's awesome. This one has a wood toenail, though. No bling toenail over here.
No bling toenail. So I want to finish this off with a fun story about a teenage prince being shot in the face.
That sounds fun.
So this is the year 1403.
Did he deserve it?
He was a prince of England, so probably did. We'll go forward a couple thousand years. This is not really fitting in the time period of anything that I talked about, but it's pretty cool. So I just wanted to talk about it. The Prince Henry, who would later become Prince Henry V. You know about Henry VIII. We talked about him a lot. So go back a couple of generations. It's Henry V.
I am planning on talking about Henry V in my next episode.
Oh, okay. Should I save this then?
No.
Or do we want to do this as like a teaser?
A teaser. Go for it.
So he was accompanying his father's army to a battle at a place in England called Shrewsbury to fight an army of rebels that were led by a guy named Harry Hotspur Percy. Harry Hotspur.
Name.
Yeah, what a name.
That's a name.
And so, like I said, got shot in the face. As you do. If you get hit with an arrow, eventually some of them is going to be in the face. Yeah, it was an arrow. Got shot in the face with an arrow. And so normally when you get shot with an arrow, the thing about arrows is that they have barbs on them. The arrowheads have barbs. So it's really hard to yank them out. And so what they would do if you got hit with an arrow, like in the torso or something, is they would just kind of keep pushing until it came out the other side. And then they'd just stitch up both sides.
That's fucked up. And also how you get so many infections.
Yeah. But this arrow entered his face right next to the nose and went back about 5 or 6 inches.
Oh.
And was probably somehow managed to avoid his spine, like in his his spinal cord and all of the important arteries. And it was just kind of lodged in, I assume his sinus or something. And so immediately the medics who were around were like, oh, fuck. And they just started yanking at it. But the arrow was stuck. And so what happened is that the shaft of the arrow, they pulled out the shaft of the arrow, leaving the arrowhead behind.
Oh, now, idiots! Come on.
Please tell me they knew that that it was stuck in there. They didn't just pull it out and go, "We're done," and then walk away.
Yeah, they were like, well, a teenage prince with an arrowhead stuck in his face. That's not good for anybody. And so and so what they did was they eventually they got the royal surgeon, a guy named John Bradmore, who had been working for the crown since 1399, 4 years ago, who assessed the situation and got working. So he filled up the wound with rose-infused honey, which is a good idea because honey has antibacterial properties and it'll seal up the wound so not more can get in there. I don't think that they knew that it was antibacterial, sort of like with the
Neanderthals.
With the Neanderthals, but people have known. I mean, we just mentioned it with the Egyptians. People have been using honey to treat wounds for thousands of years, which is kind of really interesting. So he filled the wound with rose-infused honey, and he went right to work figuring out how to get that arrow out while he was,
Did he try cutting the top part of his head open to try and access the arrow?
And so what he did was he got to work because he was, as a surgeon, he was also a skilled metal worker. And in fact, he was released from jail to help because he had recently been imprisoned on suspicion of using his metalworking skills to forge coins, which is kind of badass. But he invented this arrow extraction tool, which he forged. It's unclear whether he forged himself or he got somebody to help him forge it. But he came back a couple of days later with this arrow extraction tool, which is basically 2 tongs with grippy, screwy, knurled tips and a central shaft with a screwed end. And so he held the wound open with he called them tents, and when he wrote about it, and I assume that's like a stent or something like that. But he, held it open, got those tongs in there, grabbed the arrow by the points with the tongs, and then took the kind of central shaft, and it had a screw on it. He put it where the arrow shaft would have gone in the arrowhead and screwed it so that it attached into the arrowhead and gripped it real good. And then he was able, because now the barbs were covered up by the tongs, he was able to extract the arrow relatively easily, apparently. It just slipped out. In his word, wiggling it to and fro, little by little, with the aid of God, I extracted the arrowhead.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when God's usually involved in stuff like that, it's not a good sign.
Well, it always was. At that time,
because
God was
because
everything.
of God, the arrow was in there in the first place.
Yeah.
Because the guys on the other side were like, let God guide this arrow. And he's like, done. And it hit the guy in the face. And now it's like, let's let God get this arrow out of this guy's face. And he's like, all right. It's.
Yeah.
I guess he giveth and then taketh away arrows.
So then the wound was washed with white wine, and then they placed an ointment.
Drunk.
They placed an ointment on it made of barley flour, honey, and turpentine. And then they repeated that process for 20 days, and then he survived. He healed. He survived, became king, did all that stuff. And Bradmore was pardoned for his crime of his suspicion of using his skills to
making fake money.
Make fake money. There we go. Thank you.
Counterfeiting.
And he was rewarded with an annuity of 10 marks every year until he died in 1412, which is apparently a pretty decent amount of money. And yeah, so that was the last story. Here's a picture of it. And this is Andrew, so that you're okay with it. There's a dummy head with an arrow in it in this picture.
That's fine. As long as it's not a real person with the real dead eyes staring really at me.
Why does it look like a weird Pinocchio?
Right?
They gave that mannequin head a truly awful haircut.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, so was the style at the time.
I mean, that's like that. Think of you don't have to look at this picture. Think of the typical Lord Farquaad looking motherfucker from the Middle Ages. That's it. That was the look. Yeah. Everyone had it.
I thought that was pretty cool. So not only did he invented a specific tool for yanking an arrow out of a prince's face. Seems like a pretty cool guy. Pretty smart and cool guy.
Specifically invented tools in history are pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like that guy who had to burrow King Louis a new asshole.
What?
Oh yeah.
What?
I remember hearing about that.
I don't remember the specifics about it, but
you better.
It was he had.
You can't just say that.
It was Louis XIV, the big French king. It was a big deal at the time, and he had an abscess on his taint essentially, and it developed into a fistula, and so they were like, we need to fix him. And so essentially what they did was I think they cauterized it, and then they created a new tool that red hot poked him a new asshole. I listen. I can't exactly remember.
That's my favorite Red Hot Chili Peppers cover band is Red Hot Poke You a New Asshole.
Oh, I don't want a small correction to what I just said. It was a bodkin arrow, which is meant to puncture armor.
Fucking
so
idiot.
It wasn't barbed, but they are designed so that if you try to yank them, the shaft breaks. So that's why it broke off inside. not because of the bars, but because it broke by design.
Can we go back to the poking someone a new asshole thing? Because that is
The court
hilarious.
surgeon gradually developed an instrument that was used called Le Bistouri Royal, or the Royal Probe.
Oh my God. Holy shit.
And then
It was royal.
they operated on him.
They royally poked him a new
They
asshole.
royally operated on him, and they did bloodletting, and it took 3 hours. And he was cured. What did they exactly do? Doing research live on the pod is not something
They
that I
red
exactly
hot
want to do.
poked him a new asshole. You said those words.
I said that I can't remember, and I think it was something like that.
You know what? That's good enough for me. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode. Get dumped on. All about surgeries and old-timey holes in the head. It's pretty much just a bunch of holes that we talked about today.
Yeah, we talked about a whole bunch of different kind of
A whole
holes.
bunch of different holes, but I'm cool with that. Ash, what was your favorite thing that you learned?
I really liked hearing all about the trepanation. It's so good. It's so interesting. I love it.
But what about you? What did
Nerve
you get?
boners.
I think
was
you just
weird.
had that locked and loaded, ready to go.
Definitely weird. It's definitely weird. Yeah.
What about you? What was your favorite, Andrew?
My favorite thing was, I don't know, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Just the phrase red hot poked him a new asshole is amazing, but that's also not part of the episode. It's just
It's not part
so
of the
fresh in
episode.
my
Something
mind. I
that
can't
I
really
have
think of anything
remembered.
else. Because Ash is talking about great things about the royal, whatever the fuck it was called.
The Royal Probe.
I don't know, I enjoyed the whole episode. It was much better than the teeth episode because I actually made it through without wanting to rip my own teeth out of my own head.
Go look at that foot again.
I already deleted it from our chat, if you've noticed.
Oh god, the foot's not that bad.
Just like when Zach was posting pictures of the frozen dead people, and I had to delete them because I don't want them staring at me from my left monitor the entire time.
You're so sensitive.
Zach, what was your favorite thing when you were researching this?
My favorite thing was the bone disc ambulance.
Oh yeah, that
That's
was
pretty cool.
10 out of 10.
Yeah. One of the things that I read was like they were just carving discs out of dead people and wearing them. But I like the idea. And it's all speculation at this point, right? But my favorite is that the idea that people would have been wearing an amulet of the disc of their skull that they got removed.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway, we'll see you guys next week on Wednesday, Hump Day Dump Day. Until then, you can follow us on the social, getdumpedonpodcast@gmail.com. People don't follow us, their emails there. Or follow us on Instagram, getdumpedonpodcast@gmail.com. Wait, Get Dumped On Podcast. I'm in autopilot mode right now. It's not working. We'll see you guys next week.
Listening, if people are still listening, they know where to find us at this point.
Yeah, it's true. But some people start with the top, some people start with the bottom. So if you're new here and you made it to the end of this episode, holy shit. There's so many. You have so many episodes to catch up on.
So many
Get
episodes
going.
to catch up on. And Bo still has to post on the Instagram.
Bo's still waiting on that. All right, see you guys later. See you
it's
next week.
It's happening.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Bye.
Love you, Bo.
Ashton Zach are super smart. They went to college and learned a bunch of stuff. And Bo and Andrew didn't go to college because that's just the way life goes sometimes. What happens when you put them together and you try to make them learn? Grab your friends, let's listen together on Get Dumped On an Info Dump Podcast.
Red hot poke me a new asshole, baby.
Goodbye.